Okay, hi all. Today we're going to move on to slightly more difficult compound interest questions, and they get more difficult when I think I mentioned in the last video that when they start paying back sums or borrowing extra sums in between the years. So like if you had an investment for 3 years and you didn't touch the investment for the 3 years and the interest rate stayed the same for the 3 years, then no problem, you can use the formula and it's very straightforward. However, if you had an investment for 3 years, you would say you invested 10,000 euros at the start of the first year, and then you added an extra 2,000 to your investment at the end of the first year, and then added another 1,000 euros at the end of the second year, well then, because of the adding extra amounts, or if you were subtracting amounts, you wouldn't be able to use the formula to get your answer in one go. You'd have to work out all of the years individually, and that's the type of question we're going to look at first today. And to illustrate it, we're going to look at question 6 in your textbook on page 70. Okay, so question 6 says, Joseph borrows 32,000 at 11% annual compound interest. He repays 8,000 at the end of each of the first 2 years. So you see this, because he's repaying money at the end of the years, it's going to mean that you won't be able to use the formula just to get your answer in one go. You have to do each year step by step. So how much does Joseph owe at the end of the third year is what they're asking. So let's do it like the first compound interest example we did yesterday, and start with year 1, year 2, and that type of thing. So this is question 6, and it is, how much money had we at the start of year 1? Start year 1, it was 32,000 that Joseph borrowed. Okay, so whether it's investing or borrowing, it's the same type of calculations. So start of year 1, 32,000 was borrowed. It says the interest rate is 11%. So when we were doing these calculations yesterday, what we did was we got 111% to see exactly what was owed at the end of the first year. So multiplying by 1.11 gives you 111%, and in that case that gives you 35,520. Now, in yesterday's example, we would say then that that's what is owed at the end of year 1, start of year 1, end of year 1. But in this case, it's a little bit different, because if we look at the question again, it says he repays 8,000 euros at the end of each of the first 2 years. So he repays 8,000 euros at the end of year 1. So we have another calculation to do. We have to say 35,520 is what he would have owed if he wasn't paying back anything, but he repays 8,000. So if we subtract the amount that he repays, then the actual amount owed at the end of year 1 is going to be 27,520. So that's what's owed at the end of year 1. Okay, and just like yesterday, we said whatever is owed at the end of year 1 is what's owed at the start of year 2. So if we go down to start of year 2, and we put the same figure, 27,520. Okay, and again, the interest rate hasn't changed. It's 8% compound interest. So again, if we want to find out or get towards the figure that is owed at the end of year 2, we're going to get 111% again, and 111% of that works out to be 30,547 and 20 cents. Okay, but again, that is not what's owed at the end of year 2, because at the end of both year 1 and year 2, Joseph pays back 8,000. So again, we have to subtract 8,000 from that. So 30,547, 20 minus 8,000 is 22,547, 20. So that's what's owed at the end of year 2, in fact. Okay, so slightly more difficult work because you have to go through all of these years individually. So the last one then, we want to know at the end of the question, how much does Joseph owe at the end of the third year? So start of the third year, start of year 3 is the same amount that's owed at the end of year 2, so it's 22,547. The interest rate hasn't changed, so we're going to get 111% of that. And so what's owed at the end of year 3, well, approximately, because we're going to have to round off, is 25,027.39. Okay, so that is the solution. That is what they were asking you for. How much does Joseph owe at the end of the 3rd year? So without having repaid any 8,000 at the end of the third year, that's what Joseph owes. So next question we're going to move on to then is also in your textbook, and it's a different type of question. I'm just going to have to move things around here a little bit. It's trickier again, I would say, and it's one to pay particular attention to. So we'll take as an example, we'll take from your textbook question 9, and we'll read through it first very quickly. So it says 4,000 euros was invested for 2 years at R% compound interest. So for a start, they don't tell us what the interest rate is, so that's one issue. Furthermore, they're adding in an extra bit. A tax of 20% was deducted each year from the interest gained. So what they're saying is that you earned interest each year, but the government likes to take a chunk of any earnings, whether it's an employee's wages or earnings from an investment. So 20% of that interest that you earn each year from your investment is taken by the government. At the end of the 1st year, the investment amounted to this amount after tax had been deducted. Okay, and the first part they want to say is calculate the rate of interest R%. Okay, so this is one of those ones where they give you the answer, if you like, and they want you to work backwards to find out some other piece of information. In this case, it's the percentage rate. The percentage rate of interest, I should say. So what we'll start with is at the end of the 1st year, the investment amounted to 4,135. So this is question 9, and the investment amounted to 4,135 at the end of year 1, wasn't it? Okay. So if that's what it amounted to at the end of year 1, well, we can figure out how much interest or how much earnings you got from that investment by subtracting the amount of the investment, the amount of money that you invested. So if I subtract 4,000 from this, I get 135. So what does that 135 represent? If you'd like to think about that for a second, what does that 135 represent? Bearing in mind that the 4,135 that was that the investment amounted to was after tax was deducted. Okay. I'm going to move on. You can pause if you want to think about it some more before I tell you the answer, and you can do that all along through the videos. That 135 euros, if that's the interest after the tax has been deducted and that you're being taxed at 20%, well then this represents the other 80% of the interest that you earned. So if we want to take that 135 to be equal to 80% of the interest. And then we can use our usual method of trying to figure out what 100% of the interest was by calculating 1% and then getting 100%. So 1%, because I calculated this earlier, works out to be 1.6875. And we wouldn't want to round at this stage. We never want to round in the middle of a calculation, because ultimately our answer is this 100%. So multiplying by 100 gives us the 100%, and it's 168.75. So this 100% of interest that's exactly the amount of interest that you earned from the investment before the government took any money away. Okay. Now, the question though is, what was the rate of interest that you were earning at? Well, if this is the amount of interest that you earned on an investment of 4,000, then this is some percentage of 4,000, and we are very capable of calculating what percentage of 4,000 168.75 is. All we do is we say 168.75 over 4,000 by 100 over 1. Isn't that right? And that comes out to be, well, we should say, approximately equal to, because we're going to have to round off. And if we round to 1 decimal place, that works out to be 4.2%. Okay, and that is the answer to the first part of the question. Okay, the second part of the question then is, find the amount of the investment to the nearest percentage at the end of 2 years after tax has been deducted. Okay, excuse me. So here's where we kind of think about our start of year, end of year again. So that was the end of year 1. So at the start of year 1, or start of year 2 rather, you have 4,135. Your investment has grown to after the tax has been taken off. But of course, after the tax has been taken off, you have less money to earn interest in the second year. But it earns it in the same way. Now we know what the interest rate is. We can just multiply by 104.2%, or 1.042. And if we do that, we get a figure of 4,308, excuse me, now I have this, 67. And that's, if you like, end year 2, but before the tax was taken off, so before tax. So it's not what the person is going to end up with. It's not the amount of the investment at the end of 2 years, because the tax hasn't been deducted yet. So the tax is a bit trickier now. It's 20% of the interest that you earn. That's how much tax they're taking. So it's not 20% of whatever your investment has amounted to, and that would be something to be very careful about, I would say. So now you need to know, how much interest did you earn in that second year? Well, again, if you want to pause for a second and take a guess at how you should proceed, and then unpause again and see how we get on. I'm just going to carry on. So if we ended up in year 2 with this amount after earning interest, and we started the year with this amount, then all we'll do is, just like we did in some of the exercises last night, is we're going to subtract. So 4,308.67 minus what the investment started with at the start of the year, or started as. And when we subtract that from that, we get 173.67. So that's the interest that we earned in the second year. Again, though, before any tax has been taken away. Okay. Now, what we want to know is what the investment will amount to after the tax has been taken away. So one method, there are a few methods we can go down, we can do now, but one method is to calculate what the tax is. And we know that the tax is 20% of your interest. So if that's the interest, so we just want to know exactly what the tax was, 20%, excuse me. And that works out to be 34.73. And if that's the the tax, that's the tax that we're going to end up paying. This was the amount of our investment before the tax was taken away. All we have to do is take away this tax from the amount of the investment, and we'll have what we were looking for in the question, and it says the amount of the investment to the nearest percentage at the end of 2 years after tax has been deducted. I presume they mean to the nearest euro. That's just a mistake in the question there. So we have 4,308.67 4,267 minus 3,473, which is equal to 4,273.94, and that's the amount of your investment, the total amount of your investment at the end of the second year after tax has been deducted.